Hi, friends. As you can see, I'm not in Unity Hall. I'm here at home. One of the people that are in my bubble has developed symptoms of COVID, lack of taste and lack of smell. Fortunately, that is all. However, has been tested to see if they are COVID positive, and because they are in my bubble, I am choosing to do the responsible thing and quarantine myself until we know for sure what is going on. So for this week and perhaps next week as well, I might be here at home, but I thought what better backdrop than these snow-covered branches of the trees behind me to share a message today with you, an Advent message of peace on earth and goodwill toward men. So here we go. I am here at home and ready to begin. So we have been going through the season of Advent talking about the consciousness of humanity and the way that the consciousness of humanity continues to bring about war, to separate, to divide, to build borders and boundaries and create others and oppression, and how that seems to be built into the consciousness of humanity. I've been going forth back in time and beginning with the book of Isaiah. And I'm going to do that again today. I'm going to look at the 9th chapter of Isaiah. But before I do that, I want to give you again a little historical context, at which some of it might be extremely familiar to you at this point in time. Because you see, here we are again. The 8th chapter of Isaiah is all about the depression and despair and the oppression that has been happening, the darkness that the people are experiencing, the hopelessness, wondering, where is God? God is silent. Biblical scholars are not completely sure what this particular time period is speaking about. Some believe it might be the time when King Ahaz has made that coalition with the Assyrians, and the Assyrians are oppressing the people of Judah again. And the someday hope that is coming with the new child that will be born is King Ahaz's son, Hezekiah, who becomes king after Ahaz and is a righteous king, restores the people of Judah. Some biblical scholars believe that this might be talking about the time when the people of Judah and Israel have been taken into exile into Babylon, and as being in Babylon in exile, the oppression that takes place to the people at that time. And the coming release from exile is then spoken of in the 9th chapter of Isaiah. And of course, in our Christian tradition, this chapter of Isaiah is brought into the story of Jesus, as you'll hear in a moment, and is speaking to this wonderful counselor and Prince of Peace who is to come. And so it becomes this timeless story, this timeless understanding that we can take even in this day and this time as we face our own oppression and injustice and darkness. So here is our reading from the book of Isaiah today, the 9th chapter. I'm going to start at the 2nd verse. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke of burdens, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressors. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. And here's the piece you'll recognize. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. So here is Isaiah the prophet speaking to the people of that time, the people that are caught in darkness, about the hope that they will find, that the light of God will come and will restore justice. It's interesting in this particular passage how God is like this warrior God. There is this holy war that's taking place. You know, the plunder that will be, the destruction that will take place, and the plunder and the burning of the garments in blood. And it's like, you know, this image of this warrior God and this holy war. And of course, humanity has taken that idea and lived it as well. What do we do with this idea of a holy war, of a God that is a warrior God? When I consider this passage, and as I consider it in the whole context of time, where humanity continues to do this time and time again, separate, divide, war, plumage, destruction, right? Oppression. What I'm reminded of is that quote that says, you know, there's a long arc toward justice. There is a long arc towards justice. And that we can remember, whatever the time period that we are going through, whatever the darkness in that time period, that there is a long arc towards justice, that there is this divine order that is unfolding within creation, in which justice is assured. That's what I think of when I think of this idea of God as a warrior God and there being a holy war, because I don't think God takes sides here. But I think what God is a uplifter of justice. So the issue that I have with that idea of the long arc of justice, of remembering that God will overcome, is that sometimes that can make us complacent. You know, why do I have to worry about fixing that injustice if the long arc is towards justice? If God stands under it all, then what is it that I have to do? Justice will prevail. But you see, that too is a human idea that keeps us little and small and continues the oppression and the injustices and the wars and the separation and the boundaries and the barriers that we place within and around one another. It keeps it going. You and I have an important part to play. And there I will go forward now to the New Testament. As you know, we've been talking about a different gospel each and every week. And so the first week we looked at that Gospel of Mark, the oldest gospel, where Jesus is introduced as an adult. No miracle birth stories in the Gospel of Mark. And then, of course, the Gospels of Matthew and Luke that did introduce those elements of the birth story that we tell and retell on Christmas, the story of the shepherds in the fields and the angels coming to Mary and to Joseph and to those shepherds, and, you know, the Magi's arrival and the Bethlehem star, all part of those Gospels of Luke and Matthew. Those three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are known as the Synoptic Gospels. They tell the story of Jesus. But John is set aside from those three Gospels. The Gospel of John, our final Gospel that we're going to be looking at today, is not a part of those Synoptic Gospels. The Gospel of John is seen as written by a Greek, deeply influenced by Hellenistic teachings. And so within the Gospel of John, we see very much the play between light and dark, good and evil, the duality of mankind. And it is a very metaphorical gospel, a symbolic gospel. And it is in that place that we come to our reading, the birth of Jesus, if you will, from the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The word there, that in the beginning was the word, the Greek there is the logos. And from the Encyclopedia Britannica, we can read that the logos is an ancient Greek philosophy and early Christian theology. The divine reason implicit in the cosmos, ordering it and giving it form and meaning. So here we have it. The Word was in the beginning. The meaning was in the beginning. And without the Word, nothing was made. Without the meaning, nothing was made. There is a divine order that's unfolding, if you will, we hear again in this conversation of the Logos. Of course, in unity, the word that has become flesh, the meaning that was there in all creation is that divine Christ light. In the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And the light is that light of the divine that is within you and within me and within, as Richard Rohr says, all creation, Christ-soaked creation. Therein lies our hope of glory, that divine Christ light is within all. So here is the birth of the Christ narrative from the Gospel of John, a more universal idea, not a baby in Bethlehem at that moment, but that universal Christ that was there in the beginning and that has been present within creation at all time. In fact, creation could not be without this light. Now, in the Gospel of John, Jesus is again reminding us to be that light, not just believe in that light, not just believe in this moral arc of justice, but to actually be that light, to be the one who cares for the oppressed within your society, the poor, the widows, the children, right? To reach out to the sinners, to the taxpayers, to the prisoners. What you do to another, you do to me, Jesus tells us, right? So here we are given a directive. Don't just believe in this long moral arc of justice. We must be it. We must live it. And only then will peace be restored here on earth. Will we overcome those systems that keep us stuck and down? So let's fast forward. Let's fast forward to the song that we heard today from Bonnie and Jerry. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills, right? Go tell it on the mountain. Most of our Christmas carols come from Western European traditions, but Go Tell It on the Mountain is different. Go Tell It on a Mountain is an African spiritualist song. There was a man, his name was John Wesley Work, from Fisk University. And John Wesley Work began to bring those spiritualist songs into a book. Go Tell It on the Mountain was one of them. And then there was a group of singers, the Jubilee Singers of Fisk University, an a cappella group of black singers who would go across the country and sing these spiritualist songs to mainly white audiences that hadn't heard those spiritualist songs. Those spiritualist songs that had been gone over from plantation to plantation through the oral tradition, shared with one another, keeping alive at that time on those plantations the hope that we shall overcome, that God is here with us, and that God will help us to overcome, that we will be liberated and there will be freedom. And it is in these liberation songs of the African tradition shared from plantation to plantation, those African spiritualist songs that is the tradition of Go Tell It on the Mountain. So over the past couple of years, I've been doing my work trying to understand more about the history of racism here in the United States, for example. And one of the things that I found very interesting was that the period of enlightenment, that period that we see as being such a period of increase for humanity, the period of enlightenment was indeed a very racist period. You see, at that time, there was a conversation going on when the Bible was written about darkness and light. Of course, the idea of race hadn't entered human consciousness, but 600 years ago, the concept of race entered into our human consciousness. And so at that time of the Enlightenment, there was this great discussion based on the color of people's skin about how enlightened they were. The lighter you were, the more enlightened you were. And I'd like to share with you an example of that's coming from one of the writers at that time. Let me find it here. There we go. The German philosopher, this is coming from the German philosopher Kant, Immanuel Kant, and here's what he wrote at that time in the 1700s. Humanity is at its greatest perfection in the race of the whites. The yellow Indians do have a meager talent. The Negroes are far below, at the lowest point. you hear within Kant's quote there, this idea that based on the color of your skin, that determines how enlightened you are. And so these ideas of lightness and darkness have been used itself to oppress a people. Think about some of the words that we use, right? You're placed on a blacklist, or this is such a black period of time, or you might be blackballed. These ideas that black is somehow bad and light is somehow good comes to us from this period of enlightenment. And I share this with you so that you can be aware of them as you speak your own words. But of course, these ideas of being the light in the darkness go back to originally, right, to the book of Genesis. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. The idea that the darkness cannot overcome the light comes from these ancient scriptures before these ideas of race even entered our consciousness. And so it is from that place of light and dark that we are speaking. But I also want to remind us that within Scripture, the darkness can also be sacred, right? There was a darkness over the land, and then from that darkness, from that chaos, creation emerged, right? That dark, holy, sacred night. And so it's only, recent that we in humanity have begun to see and separate dark and light, good and bad, and forgotten the wholeness of those things. So when we talk about the darkness and the light, what I want to come from is that light of God that is within us, overcoming the darkness of ignorance. And this is what we are called to be, to allow peace on earth and goodwill toward men to be our reality. Song has been an important part of that. From, the spiritualist songs that were shared from plantation to plantation, but also within the United States and the civil rights movement. Sweet Honey on the Rock is a documentary that I just watched this week that it so illustrates this. It was a 5-person Black women a cappella group that began in 1973 that arose out of the civil justice movement. Beatrice Johnson Reagan was one of the founding members of that group, still with the group 30 years later when this documentary took place. Sweet Honey on the Rock was a group that knew that they could speak the truth about the times through song, and that it might be received easier than just if we spoke the words. Think about, those civil rights movements, the people linking arms, people of all colors, people of all ages linking arms together, singing, "We shall overcome." Sweet Honey on the Rock arose out of that tradition that we could unite in community and tell stories together honestly and truthfully about what is occurring and remind one another that we shall overcome. There was a beautiful ballad, the ballad of Harry Moore. Harry Moore, and this is sung by Sweet Honey on the Rock that I heard in this documentary. Harry Moore was the person who started the first chapter of the NAACP in Florida. On Christmas Day, Harry Moore's and his family were killed because somebody who was threatened by that voice of equality for all, threatened by that voice of freedom and release from oppression and the remembering that we are all one and that we are all equal. Somebody who was threatened by that went and placed a bomb under Harry's house, and Christmas Day blew he and his family up. It's that kind of a song that Sweet Honey on the Rock shares to let us know. This is what happened. This is what will continue to happen unless we unite together, living the truth, living the ideas that we believe. Unity tells us that we must become peaceful in mind. I have some quotes for you that, except my battery's about to die because I'm outside and it's cold, but there were some quotes that I found on the truthunity.net website. And it talked about how we must each find that place of inner peace, that peace of mind to restore peace on earth. And yes, that is what we must do. Unity teaches that as we heal that individual mind, we impact the collective consciousness of humanity. But unity also teaches that it's not enough to know the truth, but that we must live the truth that we know. It's not enough to just know that we are one. It's not enough to just proclaim at Christmas time, peace on earth, goodwill toward man. It's not enough. Not enough. We must do our part to be that light of Christ through whatever our experience is in any day. Like me, you might separate, you might divide. Like me, you might create another. Like me, you might consider in your mind ideas that hold others down. This is the mind of humanity of which we are a part. But you and I are asked to step out of that mind, to heal that mind, and then to act from that healed mind. How can you and I be peace on earth? There is our practice for today. I'll see if I can bring it up real quick because, as I said, my battery is just about dead, but I want to share with you our practice for today. In times when humanity disappoints, perhaps when even our own thoughts and behaviors disappoint, it is an important act to call out, name, and claim the consequences of our wrongs. And it is a prophetic act to call out, name, and claim our belief in peace for the world. And so once more, you are invited to create 2 statements, 1 or 2. Here are some examples. I believe that I do not know how to walk through conflict without othering. And I believe that I am capable of learning nonviolent ways to communicate and unite. I believe that I must always be right and force others to see this. And I believe that opening to new perspectives invites me to see with eyes of understanding and peace. Here is what I would like you to do, to create 1 or 2 of those statements yourself, and then to live into those ideas. Because we, like the time of Isaiah, can remember that, of course, the long arc is toward justice. Of course, God will deliver us through this time of polarization, this time of the darkness of a worldwide pandemic, this time of humanity's separation of economic conditions, this time when it appears so bleak and so dark. The Christmas star is going to shine this week. And we can know that the darkness cannot overcome the light. But we must be that light. We must be that peace that we want to see. Let us do so together. And as we do so, let us celebrate the birth of the Christ within us once more. Let us sing, glory, hallelujah. The Christ is here, and I am that, and I commit to being peace. Peace on earth, goodwill toward men. God bless everybody. I trust you will have a fantastic week practicing being the peace. And join us Thursday night, 5 p.m. for our Christmas Eve service, which will be live streamed. God bless.